"I think he's starting to like me," he murmured, his face buried in my wife's neck. "Your son actually talked to me yesterday." I stood frozen in the doorway of my own bedroom, overnight bag still in hand. The Wednesday flight I'd caught home from Chicago, a day early to surprise Lisa, had delivered its own surprise instead. "That's because you're making an effort," Lisa whispered, running her fingers through his hair. "If we take it slow, the kids will adjust. Maybe next time you can join us for dinner." She hadn't seen me yet. Mark travels so much for work. The children barely see him these days. My fingers went numb. The bag slipped, hitting the hardwood with a thud that echoed through our 15-year marriage. They sprang apart like teenagers caught by parents. But this was my bedroom. My wife. My life they were casually reassigning. "Mark." Lisa clutched the sheet to her chest, eyes wide with shock rather than shame. "You're supposed to be in Chicago until tomorrow." Her lover, David Reynolds, my regional sales manager, scrambled for his pants on the floor. I recognized his back from countless company meetings. 3 years I'd mentored him. 2 promotions I'd supported him through. "I caught an earlier flight," I said, my voice unnaturally calm. "Thought I'd surprise you." David stood now, half-dressed, eyes darting between us like a cornered animal. "Mark, this isn't what it looks like." I cut him off. "It looks like you're sleeping with my wife in my bed. But what it sounds like is you two planning to replace me in my children's lives." The betrayal of the affair was something I could have anticipated. Our marriage had been strained for years, but this calculated plan to erase me from Ethan and Sophie's lives? That was a level of cruelty I hadn't imagined possible. I stepped back into the hallway, my thoughts racing toward our children's rooms. Had they heard anything? Thank God they were at school. What else had been happening in my frequent absences? Lisa followed me into the hall, clutching a robe around herself. "Mark, wait. We need to talk." "No," I said, turning to face her. My body trembled with adrenaline, but my mind had gone strangely clear. "Not now. Not with him here." I grabbed my fallen bag and headed downstairs. Behind me, I heard urgent whispers between them. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a text from my boss asking about tomorrow's presentation. The mundane intrusion from my work life felt surreal against what I just witnessed. In the kitchen, I pulled out my laptop and opened it on the counter. My hands moved with purpose, though I wasn't fully conscious of my plan yet. I connected to our home security system and downloaded the last month of footage. I wasn't even sure why, but something told me I needed evidence of what exactly. I didn't know yet. David appeared at the bottom of the stairs, fully dressed now, his sales manager composure back in place. "Mark, I want to apologize." "Get out of my house," I said without looking up from my screen. "We should discuss this like adults." I turned then, meeting his eyes. "Like adults? You mean like how you were just discussing replacing me in my children's lives? That kind of adult conversation?" He paled slightly. "You misunderstood, eh?" I heard every word. I stepped toward him, and he instinctively backed up. "My children are not part of whatever midlife package deal you think you're getting with my wife." The front door opened behind him, and my mother-in-law Martha stood there, keys in hand. She had a regular Wednesday routine of picking up the kids from school and bringing them to piano lessons. She froze, sensing the tension. "What's going on?" "Mark, you're home early." Lisa appeared at the top of the stairs, now fully dressed but obviously flustered. "Mom, I didn't expect you until 3. Martha's eyes narrowed as she took in the scene, her daughter's disheveled appearance, David's obvious discomfort, my barely contained fury. "I came to drop off that casserole I promised," she said slowly, placing a dish on the entryway table. Her eyes locked with mine, and in that moment, I saw a flash of something unexpected. Knowledge. She'd known. The realization hit me like a second betrayal. How many others had known while I traveled for work, building a future for a family that was being dismantled behind my back. David took the opportunity to slip past Martha and out the door, muttering some excuse about an emergency at the office. Martha closed the door behind him and turned to face us. "Well," she said with a sigh that contained no surprise whatsoever, "I suppose it's all out in the open now." I stared at her, this woman who had spent holidays at our table, who had held my children as babies. "You knew." She at least had the decency to look uncomfortable. "Mark, marriages are complicated." "That's not what I asked," I interrupted. "How long have you known that Lisa was planning to replace me in my children's lives?" Martha's eyes widened slightly, darting to Lisa. "What is he talking about?" Lisa came down the stairs. "He overheard something and misinterpreted." "I heard you two discussing how to ease David into my children's lives," I said, my voice rising despite my efforts to control it. How they would adjust quickly because Mark is barely home anyway. Martha had the grace to look troubled now. Lisa, tell me you weren't planning something like that. Lisa's face hardened. You don't understand what it's been like, Mom. The kids need stability, not a father who's gone 20 days a month. So your solution was to replace him? Without even talking to him about changing his job? Martha asked, and for the first time in 15 years of knowing her, I felt a flash of gratitude toward my mother-in-law. I need some air, I said, grabbing my keys from the counter. I'll be back before the kids get home. As I walked to my car, my phone buzzed again. A text from my best friend, Steve. How's Chicago? We still on for golf Saturday? My thumb hovered over the screen. Steve, the one person I'd trust with anything. I started typing. Back early. Need to talk. Can you meet now? 3 dots appeared immediately. Then, can't now. Meeting in 30. Riverside Cafe at 4? It was only 1:30. I needed to clear my head anyway. I responded with a simple "see you then" and drove to a nearby park, sitting on a bench for nearly an hour, my mind replaying what I'd heard. Not just the affair, that was painful but almost secondary now, but the planning, the discussion of gradually shifting my children away from me while maintaining appearances. When I walked into the cafe, Steve was already at a corner table, 2 coffees waiting. One look at my face and he knew something was seriously wrong. Jesus, Mark, what happened? I sat down heavily. Lisa's been having an affair. With David Reynolds. Steve's jaw tightened. He'd met David at company functions. That ambitious little prick from your Chicago office? I nodded, wrapping my hands around the coffee mug. I caught them today. Came home early to surprise her. Shit, man. I'm sorry. He leaned forward. What are you going to do? That's not even the worst part, I said, my voice catching. I overheard them talking about how to replace me in the kids' lives. Like I was some placeholder until something better came along. Steve's expression changed from sympathy to anger. What the hell? They had it all planned out, I continued, the words pouring out now. Weekend visits with David, then family dinners, Lisa saying the kids would adapt fast because I'm barely home anyway. I pulled out my phone and showed him the text from my boss. I've been killing myself on this promotion track so we could afford the private school Lisa insisted on, the summer camps, the college funds. All while they were planning to erase me. Steve was quiet for a moment, processing. Does anyone else know? Her mother walked in right after. Turns out she knew about the affair. I took a sip of coffee, grimacing at its bitterness. Who knows how many others are in on it? What about your kids? Do they suspect anything? The thought of Ethan and Sophie sent a fresh wave of panic through me. No idea. They're at school now. I need to figure out what to do before they get home. Steve leaned back, his face serious. You should talk to a lawyer. Soon. I can't just. Yes, you can, he interrupted. This isn't just about the affair anymore, Mark. They were discussing how to gradually remove you from your children's lives. You need protection. He was right, and I knew it. I nodded slowly. My sister went through a nasty divorce last year, Steve continued. Her lawyer was excellent. Let me see if she can recommend someone. He pulled out his phone. Looks like Patricia Whitman might have an opening next Tuesday. That gives you a few days to think things through. As he pulled out his phone, mine rang. Lisa. I declined the call. I need to get back before the kids are home, I said, standing up. Steve stood too, putting a hand on my shoulder. Don't confront her again until you've talked to a lawyer. And Mark, don't leave the house. That can be used against you later. I nodded, grateful for his clarity when my own thoughts were chaos. I'll call you tonight, he said. And Mark, this isn't your fault. I wanted to believe him. When I got back to the house, Lisa was sitting at the kitchen island, her face pale and determined. Martha was gone. We need to talk, she said. Not now. I moved past her toward the stairs. Yes, now, she insisted, following me. You didn't hear everything. David and I were just... I stopped, turning to face her. Discussing how to gradually phase me out of our children's lives? I heard enough. Lisa. Her face flushed. You're taking it out of context. We were talking hypothetically about what might happen if we what? Divorced? Funny, I don't recall being consulted about that hypothetical scenario. My phone buzzed with a text from Steve confirming Patricia Whitman could see me Tuesday afternoon. You're never here to consult, she snapped. You're always on the road, chasing that next promotion, that next commission. The kids barely know you anymore. The accusation stung because it held a grain of truth. I had been traveling more in the past 2 years, building my client base, securing our financial future. So instead of talking to me about it, asking me to cut back on travel, you decided to replace me? I stepped closer. Tell me, when exactly did you plan to inform me that I was being phased out of my own family? She stepped back, arms crossed defensively. It wasn't like that. Then what was it like, Lisa? Explain it to me. How exactly does one ethically plan to insert another man into their children's lives while pushing their father out? Before she could answer, we heard the front door open and children's voices filled the hallway. Mom, Dad. Sophie's excited squeal stopped us both cold. Our 9-year-old daughter burst into the room, face lighting up when she saw me. Dad, you're home early. She threw herself into my arms, and I caught her, holding her tight, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo. Ethan, 12 and increasingly cool, hung back in the doorway but couldn't hide his smile. Hey, Dad. Thought you weren't back until tomorrow. I set Sophie down, moving to give him a quick hug. Wrapped up early. Thought I'd surprise you guys. Lisa stood frozen, watching our reunion with an unreadable expression. Can we do pizza and movie night since you're home? Sophie asked, bouncing on her toes. Sure, sweetheart, I said, forcing a smile. Why don't you two start homework, and I'll order in a bit. As they headed upstairs, I turned back to Lisa. We'll continue this discussion later, I said quietly. For now, we act normal for their sake. Her eyes filled with tears. Mark. Later, I repeated firmly, then followed the kids upstairs to help with homework, my phone heavy in my pocket with the lawyer's number. That evening was surreal, helping with math problems, ordering pizza, watching a superhero movie on the couch with Sophie cuddled against me and Ethan pretending he wasn't engrossed in the film. Lisa sat across the room, checking her phone repeatedly, a tight smile plastered on her face whenever the kids looked her way. After they were in bed, I retreated to the guest room without a word. Lisa didn't attempt to follow me. I called the lawyer Steve recommended and left a message requesting an urgent appointment for the next day. Then I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at my phone, and made another call. Mark? Everything okay? My boss, Ted, sounded concerned at the late hour. Not really, I said honestly. I need to talk to you about reducing my travel schedule. Family emergency. There was a pause. Is everyone all right? No, I admitted, and I need to be home more to deal with it. To my surprise, Ted didn't hesitate. We can reassign some of your territories. Your family comes first, Mark. We'll figure it out. If only I'd had this conversation months ago. I thanked him and hung up, then spent the night staring at the ceiling, planning my next moves. The next several days were a careful choreography of normalcy, breakfast with the kids, Lisa's forced cheerfulness, my quiet focus on Ethan and Sophie. I started driving them to school myself, savoring their chatter, studying their faces as if memorizing them. Will you be home when we get back today? Ethan asked on Friday as they climbed out of the car. Absolutely, I promised. I have a meeting this afternoon, but I'll be back to pick you up myself. The following Tuesday, I finally met with Patricia Whitman, the lawyer Steve had recommended. She was everything he described: sharp, direct, and utterly focused on protecting my interests. Based on what you've told me, we should start preparing, she said after hearing my story. First, document everything: the affair, the conversation you overheard, any evidence of them discussing changing your role in your children's lives. She slid a notepad across her desk. Write down every detail you can remember of that conversation, as close to exact words as possible. As I wrote, she continued, have you checked your financial accounts? Often in these situations, assets start mysteriously moving. I hadn't even thought of that. I'll look into it this week. Good. Now, regarding custody, your travel schedule could be problematic. What's your thinking there? I'm already working on it, I said, explaining my initial conversation with Ted. We have a meeting scheduled tomorrow to discuss reassigning some of my territories. She nodded approvingly. That's proactive. Shows initiative and commitment. Courts respond well to that. By the time I left her office, I had a clearer path forward and felt a measure of control returning. 2 days later, I visited our bank and requested account statements for the past year. What I found stunned me. Lisa had been transferring money, small amounts each month from our joint household account, to a separate account I hadn't known existed. The total had reached $23,000, money that had come primarily from my commissions and bonuses that I deposited into our family account for household expenses. When I pulled into our driveway that evening, I noticed Martha's car parked on the street. Great. Reinforcements had arrived. Inside, Lisa and Martha sat at the kitchen table, their conversation halting abruptly when I walked in. "Mark," Martha started, her tone conciliatory. "Lisa's told me about what's happening. I think we all need to talk calmly about this situation." I set my keys down carefully. "And what situation is that exactly, Martha? The affair, or the discussions about gradually removing me from my children's lives?" Martha's eyes widened slightly. She looked at Lisa with confusion. "What is he talking about?" "I heard them discussing it," I said, watching Martha's reaction closely. "And frankly, I'm more concerned about that than the affair itself." Lisa stood up. "Mark, please. It wasn't what you think. We were just talking about David being around more." "Don't," I interrupted, anger flaring. "Don't insult my intelligence by pretending that what I heard wasn't exactly what it sounded like." Martha frowned deeply. "Lisa, you told me about David, but not about any plans involving the children." She hesitated, then added, "I was worried you were getting in too deep, but I never imagined this." "This wasn't the heat of the moment," I said, turning to Martha. "This was a discussion about integrating another man into Ethan and Sophie's lives. And quite frankly, Martha, the fact that you knew about the affair and said nothing is disappointing enough." Martha's shoulders dropped, her expression troubled. "I only found out last week, Mark, and I told her to end it immediately." "That's true," Lisa protested. "Mom told me to break it off." "Did she?" I turned back to Lisa. "And did you?" "Because from what I saw yesterday, it seemed quite ongoing." Martha stood up, gathering her purse. "I think I should go. You two need to talk privately." After she left, Lisa collapsed into a chair. "What do you want me to say, Mark? That I made a terrible mistake?" "I did." "I'm sorry." "Sorry you did it? Or sorry you got caught?" I asked, leaning against the counter. Her silence was answer enough. "I spoke with a lawyer today," I said finally. Her head snapped up. "Already? You didn't even give us a chance to eat." "To what?" "Finish your plan." I pulled out my phone. "I also visited the bank. Want to explain the $23,000 you've been skimming from our household account, primarily from my commission payments, over the past year?" Her face paled. "That's... I was setting aside emergency funds. For us. For the family." The explanation was so flimsy it almost made me laugh. "Our emergency fund is the money market account we set up together. The one we both have access to. Where did you think you'd need $23,000 without my knowledge?" She stared at the floor, trapped in her own web of deception. "I've been in touch with work," I continued. "I'm reducing my travel schedule effective immediately. And I'm picking up the kids from school today. What are you going to tell them?" Fear crept into her voice. "Nothing yet," I said. "Unlike you and David, I don't make plans about my children's lives without discussing it with all parties involved." Her eyes filled with tears. "Mark, please. We can work this out. It was a mistake." "Which part? The affair? The secret bank account? Or discussing how to ease my children away from me?" She had no answer for that. When I picked up Ethan and Sophie from school, their surprise at seeing me again turned to delight. We stopped for ice cream on the way home, and I listened to their stories about their day with complete attention, storing each detail, each laugh like precious gems. Back at the house, Lisa hovered anxiously as the kids did homework. I caught her watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read: regret, calculation, fear. After the kids were in bed, she approached me in the kitchen. "I broke it off with David," she said quietly. "I called him this morning. It's over." I continued loading the dishwasher without looking at her. "Good for you." "I mean it, Mark. I want to try to fix this. For the kids." I turned to face her. "And how exactly do you propose we fix the fact that you were planning to replace me in their lives?" She shook her head frantically. "It wasn't a real plan. We were just talking, fantasizing. I would never have actually." "But you were already actually doing it," I interrupted. "The separate bank account, the affair, the lies. Those weren't fantasies, Lisa. Those were actions." She sank into a chair. "What do you want from me? Right now?" "Space. I'll be staying in the guest room until I figure out my next steps." "And the kids?" "We'll know nothing until we decide together what to tell them," I said firmly. "But make no mistake, I will be in their lives every day from now on. No one is replacing me." 2 days later, I was in my office at home, reviewing documents from Patricia, when my phone rang. Steve's name flashed on the screen. "Hey," I answered, grateful for the distraction. "How are you holding up?" he asked. "Taking it day by day. Lisa claims she ended things with David. Do you believe her?" I sighed. "I don't know what to believe anymore." "Listen," Steve said, hesitation in his voice. "There's something you should know. I ran into Jenny from accounting yesterday. Jenny handled expense reports for our region. My stomach tightened. And she mentioned that David's been expensing hotel rooms on sales trips when you weren't even in the same city, going back at least a year. The timeline hit me hard. A year. Not a recent mistake, not a momentary lapse, but a sustained deception. Thanks for telling me, I said, my voice hollow. After hanging up, I sat motionless, processing this new information. A year of lies. A year of planning. How much of our life together had been real? A knock at the door pulled me from my thoughts. Lisa stood there, holding a manila envelope. This came for you, she said, handing it over. It looks important. I recognized Patricia's firm's logo in the corner. Thanks. She lingered in the doorway. Mark, I've been thinking. Maybe we should try counseling? For the kids' sake. I set the envelope down. Is that what you want, or what Martha suggested? She flinched. Does it matter? I want our family to stay together. Our family, I repeated slowly. The same family you and David were planning to restructure without my input? I told you, that wasn't a real plan. Stop lying. I cut her off. David's been expensing hotel rooms for your rendezvous for over a year. A year, Lisa. Her face crumpled. How did you? It doesn't matter how I know. What matters is that you're still lying, even now, when everything's exposed. She sank into the chair across from my desk. What do you want me to say? The truth would be a start, I said. When did it begin? When did I become so replaceable to you? She stared at her hands for a long moment. It started after your promotion. You were gone all the time. David was there. I was working to build our future, I said, the irony bitter on my tongue. I know, she whispered. That's what made it so easy to justify at first. You were so focused on work, on providing, but not on us. There was truth there that stung. And you didn't think to talk to me about it? To tell me you were unhappy? I tried. Her voice rose. Remember that trip to Cabo I planned for our anniversary? You canceled 2 days before because of that Cleveland client. I did remember. The client had represented a huge commission, money for Ethan's braces and Sophie's ballet classes. So instead of trying again, you started an affair with my regional manager? She looked away. It wasn't planned. It just happened. And the plan to ease David into our children's lives? Did that just happen too? That was David's idea, she admitted quietly. He said if we were going to be together, we needed to think about the future. The kids' future. The casual arrogance of it. David plotting to step into my role, my life, rekindled my anger. Well, David's future plans have changed, I said coldly. As have yours. The next week passed in a strange parallel reality. Normal routines with the kids, icy distance with Lisa, and occasional phone calls with Patricia to prepare for what might come next. I took Ethan and Sophie to the park on Saturday, watching them play with an ache in my chest. How had I not seen the precious gift of these ordinary moments before? Had I really been so consumed with providing for their future that I'd missed their present? That night, as I was tucking Sophie in, she looked up at me with those big brown eyes. Daddy, why is everyone so quiet at dinner? She asked, clutching her stuffed rabbit. I smoothed her hair back from her forehead. Sometimes grown-ups just have a lot on their minds, sweetheart. She frowned slightly. Are you mad at Mommy? She looks sad when you're not looking. Children notice everything. Mommy and I are working through some grown-up stuff, I said carefully. But you don't need to worry about it. Is that why you're sleeping in the other room? I nodded. Just for a little while. Will you still take me to the park on Saturday? Of course, I promised. Nothing will change that. She seemed satisfied with that, at least for now. Later, as I was tucking Ethan in, he hesitated before asking, Dad, why are you sleeping in the guest room? The question caught me off guard. I tried to smile naturally. Just having some trouble sleeping. Don't want to disturb your mom with my tossing and turning. He looked at me skeptically, too perceptive for a 12-year-old. Is everything okay with you guys? We're working through some grown-up stuff, I said carefully. But you don't need to worry about it. Sophie thinks you're mad at Mom, he said, picking at a loose thread on his comforter. I sat on the edge of his bed. What do you think? He shrugged. I think grown-ups are weird. That made me smile genuinely. You've got that right. My phone buzzed with a text from Lisa. Can we talk when you get home? Important. When we arrived back at the house, Martha's car was in the driveway again. I sighed, preparing for another tag team intervention. Go wash up for lunch, I told the kids as we entered. They raced upstairs, leaving me to face whatever awaited in the kitchen. I found Lisa and Martha sitting with an older man I recognized as Lisa's father, Robert. He rarely involved himself in family matters, preferring the sanctuary of his workshop to emotional confrontations. "Mark," he said, standing to shake my hand. "Sorry about the ambush." His honesty was refreshing after days of Lisa's evasions. "Dad wanted to talk to both of us," Lisa explained, her expression unreadable. I took a seat, curious despite my wariness. Robert cleared his throat. "I've heard bits and pieces from these two, but I'd like to hear your side, Mark." Before I could respond, Martha interjected. "Robert, we've already discussed." "Let him speak, Martha," Robert said firmly. "I want to hear from Mark." Surprised by his support, I gave him a straightforward account of what had happened, discovering the affair, overhearing their plans for the children, finding the secret bank account. Robert listened without interruption, his weathered face growing increasingly troubled. When I finished, he turned to Lisa. "Is this true? Were you and this man planning to what? Replace Mark in the children's lives?" Lisa squirmed under her father's direct questioning. "It wasn't exactly like that." "What was it exactly like then?" Robert pressed. "David thought it would be easier for the kids if they got used to him gradually," she admitted finally. "If we decided to be together." Robert's expression hardened. "And you agreed with this plan? To ease your children's father out of their lives?" Lisa's silence was damning. Robert stood up, disappointment etched in every line of his face. "Your mother and I raised you better than this, Lisa. A man works hard to provide for his family, and this is how you repay him? With betrayal and schemes." Martha tried to intervene. "Robert, there are two sides." "No, Martha," he cut her off. "Some things are simply wrong, and what Lisa has done is wrong. Not just the affair. People make mistakes, but this calculated plan to separate Mark from his children." He turned to me. "Mark, I owe you an apology. I had no idea this was happening." His support hit me with unexpected force, and I had to take a moment before responding. "Thank you, Robert." He nodded, then addressed Lisa again. "You need to make this right. Whatever that looks like, whatever it takes." Lisa's eyes filled with tears. "Dad, I don't know how." "Start with the truth," he said simply. "All of it. No more lies, no more schemes. And be prepared to face the consequences." After he and Martha left, Lisa and I sat in heavy silence at the kitchen table. "My lawyer drew up separation papers," I said finally. "I wasn't planning to present them yet, but given everything—" "You're really doing this?" she whispered. "Breaking up our family?" The hypocrisy of her question after what I discovered almost took my breath away. "Our family was broken the moment you and David started planning my replacement." She wiped at her tears. "What about the kids?" "We tell them together," I said firmly. "A simplified version of the truth, that we're having problems and need some time apart. No details about David, no blame assigned." "When?" "Tomorrow, after breakfast." They deserve to hear it from both of us, with enough time to process before school on Monday. She nodded, defeated. "And where will you go?" "I'm not going anywhere," I said. "This is my home, and I'm not leaving my children. My lawyer advises against it, and frankly, I agree." Her head snapped up. "You can't expect me to leave." "I expect you to do what's best for Ethan and Sophie," I replied evenly. "But that's your decision." The next morning, sitting the children down for that conversation was the hardest thing I'd ever done. Sophie's tears and Ethan's stony silence cut deeper than any betrayal. We kept it simple, as agreed. Mom and Dad were having problems and needed time apart to figure things out. Both of us loved them more than anything. Nothing would change their routines for now. Lisa moved into the guest room, and we established an uneasy truce for the children's sake. I continued picking them up from school daily, helping with homework, attending Ethan's soccer games and Sophie's recitals. My reduced travel schedule meant I was present in ways I hadn't been before, and despite the pain of our situation, I found unexpected joy in these rediscovered connections with my children. 3 weeks into our separation, I received a text from an unknown number. "This is David Reynolds. Can we meet? Important." My immediate instinct was to refuse, but curiosity won out. I agreed to a public meeting at a coffee shop downtown. David was already there when I arrived, nervously shredding a napkin at a corner table. He stood as I approached. "Mark, thank you for coming," he said, extending his hand. I ignored it and sat down. "What do you want, David?" He withdrew his hand awkwardly and sat. I wanted to apologize, face to face. "What happened?" "What we did. It was inexcusable." "Yes, it was," I agreed coldly. "Is that all?" "You've misunderstood some things," he started, then saw my expression harden. "I mean, I know what you heard sounds terrible, but don't tell me what I heard. I cut him off. I was there. He looked down at his hands. Okay, you're right. He took a deep breath. But there's something you should know about that conversation about the children. I tensed. What about it? It was mostly my idea, he said, finally meeting my eyes. Lisa was actually resistant. She kept saying the kids adored you, that they'd never accept anyone else in your place. This was unexpected, but she didn't shut down the discussion. No, he admitted. She listened, but she wasn't enthusiastic. I pushed it because... He trailed off. Because I was jealous, he said simply. Of your life, your family. I wanted it for myself. The naked admission stunned me. So you tried to take it. He nodded miserably. It was wrong. All of it. After you found out, when Lisa called it off. I realized how far I'd fallen. I've resigned from the company. This was news to me. When? Last week. I'm moving to Seattle. Fresh start. He finally met my eyes. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that whatever you decide about your marriage, the kids were never part of some master plan. That was just me talking, fantasizing about a life I hadn't earned. I considered his words carefully. Why tell me this now? Because you deserve the truth, he said. And because I need to start making amends somewhere. After he left, I sat for a long time, turning our conversation over in my mind. If what he said was true, if Lisa had been resistant to the idea of replacing me in the children's lives, did that change anything? That evening, after the kids were in bed, I found Lisa sitting on the back porch, staring at nothing. I met with David today, I said, taking the chair across from her. She looked up, startled. What? Why? He wanted to tell me that the plan to ease me out of the kids' lives was his idea, that you were resistant to it. Her eyes widened. He told you that? Was he lying? She started to speak, then stopped, seemed to reconsider. No, he wasn't entirely lying. I never wanted to keep you from the kids, Mark. I know how much you love them, how much they love you. Then why entertain the conversation at all? I asked, genuinely curious. She was quiet for a moment. I was unhappy, confused. David kept painting this picture of a perfect life together. She sighed. I listened because I was flattered by his attention, because I felt seen when you were always gone. But you didn't shut it down. No, she admitted. I didn't. And I should have. Just like I should have ended the affair before it began, talked to you about how I was feeling, been honest about everything. It was the most straightforward she'd been since this began. The secret account? I asked. She sighed. That was just mine. Money I was setting aside. I told myself it was in case of emergency, but I think I knew, even then, that I was creating an escape route. We sat in silence for a while, the truth between us finally unvarnished. Where do we go from here, Lisa? I asked eventually. I don't know, she said honestly. Can you ever trust me again? Should you? I don't know either, I admitted. But we have 2 children who deserve parents who at least tried everything before walking away. She looked at me with cautious hope. Counseling. I nodded slowly. Counseling. Complete transparency. In time. And David is moving to Seattle, I said, which is for the best. She nodded, relief evident in her posture. I really am sorry, Mark, for all of it. I know, I said, and for the first time since discovering her betrayal, I believed her. The road ahead would be long and uncertain. Trust, once broken, is not easily restored. But sitting there in the gathering darkness, I made a decision. I would fight for my place in my children's lives with everything I had, not against a rival, but for myself, for the father I wanted to be, the father they deserved. Whether Lisa and I ultimately saved our marriage or not, one thing was certain. No one would ever replace me in Ethan and Sophie's lives. Not David, not anyone. That was a role I had earned, a role I would never again take for granted. Was I right to give our marriage another chance after such a betrayal? Or should I have walked away, despite the pain it would cause our children? How would you have handled discovering your spouse planning to replace you in your children's lives?